My name is Justin Robinson. I'm the founder and chairman of the Not Your District Political Action Committee. Essentially, we're a grassroots organization of district residents who are raising money to spend in congressional elections to advocate for candidates who support home rule for DC, statehood, but also to oppose those candidates who don't, and who've sort of made it a point to meddle in DC's local affairs and interfere with us being able to govern ourselves like any other state in the union. For me, it all started in December of 2014. That was when the whole fight over Initiative 71 was happening with Congress. Andy Harris made a very public display of stepping in to overturn this law, which was a really major criminal justice reform. We were going to legalize marijuana, which disproportionately affects people of color in DC. And he was going to single-handedly put potentially thousands of people in jail. And there was nothing we could do about it. We don't have any congressmen on the Hill who can, be in those negotiations and advocate on our behalf. We don't have any senators. We have our delegate, and she's amazing, but when it comes down to it, she can't vote. She can sit there and watch others vote on the issues that affect her constituents, but we don't have a voice. So after that happened, I was very vocal about it with my circle of friends, and one of my friends pointed me towards this Facebook page. And there were all these comments from people in DC like, you don't live here, and my trash needs to be picked up. Are you going to take care of that too? And it was pretty funny, and it was also kind of inspiring. It's really great that people are aware of what's happening. But at the end of the day, it's a staffer somewhere who monitors that Facebook page, and Andy Harris is never going to hear about it. And even if he did, he wouldn't care. So my thinking was, well, let's do something that he actually does care about. And the one thing politicians care about the most, their jobs, re-election. And the best way to have an impact there, in lieu of voting against him, we don't really get an opportunity to do that. We decided we're going to raise money and spend it against him. He's sort of the most obvious target. We're actually, me and my team are sort of in the process of settling down on final targets. Since then, there have been several other actions taken by Congress. They're kind of on a roll right now. Ted Cruz, doing his best to sort of strip away protections for LGBTQ community people. You have Marco Rubio, who's trying to basically abolish every gun law that DC has ever passed. Just recently, the Government Oversight Committee passed a resolution of disapproval for a law that would prevent women from being fired from their jobs for using birth control. We live in this very convoluted system where we have a council and they pass laws. Anytime a law is passed in DC, it is sent to Congress for a congressional review. They have 30 days to review this law. If they pass a resolution of disapproval, it has to pass both houses, and then it goes to the president. If the president signs it, then that law is invalidated. Otherwise, after 30 days, it becomes a law. So it's actually usually their preferred tool for interfering in our affairs is the appropriations process. Because our budget is technically under control of the federal government, in any law, they can just insert a provision saying that DC can't use any money for this or that. It's how they were able to almost completely stop Initiative 71. So the resolution of disapproval is very rarely used, but Jason Chaffetz, chairman of the Government Oversight Committee, decided that he wanted to pursue this avenue, and it passed out of committee, passed the House. Unfortunately, the Senate didn't take it up. And it was a largely symbolic gesture, as these things often are. In my heart of hearts, I don't believe they actually have an interest in any of this. It's really just about scoring political points back home, but their actions do have real effects for us here. And you take something like Initiative 71, where, like I said, people can end up in jail because of this, and you're doing this just to seem more conservative to your voters back home. So we have several people that we're looking at. It's one of those things where resources really determines how effective we can be. Our target right now is to hit our first $10,000 to be able to start doing some polling in these places to see how feasible it is. I mean, because the real goal here is to have results. We want to be able to point and say, this is what happens when you interfere with DC. Like, there will be a political consequence. They consider this to be a pretty cheap political endeavor. You know, oh, we can just beat up on DC and, you know, we're never going to hear about it. They don't have anyone here in Congress who's going to bug us about it. None of them are ever going to vote against us, so why not? So my goal is to sort of raise the political price of interfering with DC.
Are you familiar with the political antecedent of this, which is when Walter Fauntleroy, if I know the story correctly, who was our first delegate to Congress, took a contingent of people to South Carolina to campaign against and raise money against McClellan, who had been controlling the district for many years, and were successful.
And that was how we got to the point of the Home Rule Act. And you know, that's sort of what established the entire congressional review process. But what's really upsetting is that so often they step outside of that process and sort of abuse their authority to make a political point.
How many people are you currently working with at the grassroots level?
Yeah, so there are about 5 people who are really on the team, and they really do have a varied background. I mean, some of them have experience with national politics, some of them are very involved with local DC politics, progressive causes. One of my volunteers works on the Hill. So it's a really great dynamic group, and it's really been one of the most inspiring parts about the entire process for me is, you know, I sort of created this thing a little bit on a whim. You know, I didn't really know how far I would be able to take it. And, you know, I put it out there, I made a website and started like doing fundraising happy hours, and like all these people started finding me. You know, they heard, like, we heard about what you're doing, we think it's great, how can I help? You know, and that's like the response that I get so often. It really is sort of a testament to like where we are right now in the movement for home rule and for statehood, that, you know, we've sort of reached like this tipping point where people are really ready to take action. I mean, look at me.
Have you established that everyone you've spoken with and received funding from lives in the district, or there are people outside the district?
People inside and out. I mean, the vast majority so far has come from inside the district, but I don't think this is just an issue. I mean, the whole point of the PAC is to take this outside of the city as well, because it really does need to become a national conversation that, you know, there's over 600,000 people in this city who are disenfranchised. And, you know, I mean, for a nation like America who prides itself on our democracy, to have so many of our citizens, and to add insult to injury, they're in the seat of power in the capital of the country, to have us not have any representation in an entire branch of government, it's a travesty, really. And I think once more people learn more about it, I think they'll feel the same way. The analogy I often use is that it's like a bully, you know, the schoolyard bully, and you can ask nicely for them to stop. That generally won't do anything. You can, you know, try and appeal to the teacher, to others, you know, some higher power. Mixed results at best, but the one thing that will always get a bully to stop is when you stand up to them. So that's what we're doing. We're standing up to the bullies in Congress. Our website is NotYourDistrict.com. There you can find information about events and fundraisers that we're doing. You can also donate there as well, which is a very important part of it. We've also started a GoFundMe campaign to sort of hit that first initial $10,000 target. We've raised about $1,700 so far. So, I mean, but we have a long way to go. I mean, we want to, as I said before, resources dictate how effective we can be, and we want to be very effective. So the GoFundMe is gofundme.com/NotYourDistrict. We're also on Facebook and Twitter. We try and keep the public updated on happenings going on with statehood and, you know, DC home rule and that sort of thing. Yeah. We are on the internet. I've had some limited interactions with the council, mostly in informal capacities. Again, another rider that's put on pretty much every spending bill is one saying that DC can't use any money to advocate for statehood. It's like the ultimate catch-22. I mean, but so interacting with the council can be a little tricky that way because we are explicitly doing that. So everything has to be done in a very informal capacity, but we know that they're allies. I actually very briefly met Eleanor Holmes Norton recently, and it was really great. I told her, you know, like, my name's Justin, I'm doing this PAC, and she was like, can I give you a hug? It was really great. So she's an ally as well. There's a lot of different people involved with this, whether it's the council, the mayor's office, our shadow representatives, our shadow senators, just community activists. I mean, there's various organizations that have been set up on this for a while. So a large part of what I've been doing, I'm no political professional. This is something that I started. So it's really introducing myself to them and, you know, sort of becoming a little bit more of a known quantity in the community. It's been sort of my goal over the last several months. You know, the next month or two are really going to be sort of momentum shaping months for us. It's when we really plan on finalizing our targets, really starting to go up with test ads to really hone our message. It's a very interesting dynamic we're in because the most egregious violators of our home rule are generally Republicans in very safe Republican districts. And this is just a way for them to show off their conservative bona fides. So it makes it very difficult for us because you go to those places and you say, well, hey, DC wanted to pass a law legalizing marijuana, or we wanted to pass this gun law, and they're like, well, no, you shouldn't do that anyway, so we're on board. You know? So framing the issue in a way that really sort of points out the fundamental hypocrisy of it all. I mean, Republicans more than anyone are all about local control. Keep the power as close to the people as possible and not having a heavy-handed federal government. And this is the exact opposite. It is the federal government stepping into a local government and invalidating their laws, nullifying laws at their whim. So presenting it in that framework to them of this is just fundamentally undemocratic. And also point out the fact that, you know, your congressman or your senator has very limited time there on the Hill. Is passing laws about DC really the best use of their time? So those are sort of the messages that we want to begin testing to see what sort of response that we get. These Republicans who often take these actions come from very safe conservative districts, and our issues aren't the most important to their constituents. So it's about framing it in a broader sense so that people will sort of buy into the idea that, you know what, whether you agree with my political leanings or not, you should deserve to vote. No one, I mean, it's the bedrock of our democracy is the enfranchisement of all people. And I think that's something that even conservatives can agree with, whether they agree with our city's policies or not. It's our city to determine that.